What is up, Bat Family? Welcome to Batman Theory, where we take a deep dive into comic books, movies, cartoons, and everything in between that has to do with the Dark Knight. Guys, in today's episode of Batman Theory, I want to talk to you about what would have happened if Joker was in The Dark Knight Rises. But before we get started, guys, I'd like to ask you, if you like what we got, our content, please like and subscribe to our channel. We are new on here. We want to get to, as soon as we get to 1,000 subs, we're going to be giving away a really cool backlit Batman sign to one lucky subscriber. And so let's get right to it.
And here we go.
Alright guys, so like I said, in this video we're going to be talking about what would happen if Heath Ledger's Joker was in The Dark Knight Rises. Now, what was the plan? What would have happened? And the obvious answer is obviously, well, he unfortunately passed away before something like that could have even been possible. The Dark Knight Rises came out 4 years after The Dark Knight, and one of the reasons it came out 4 years instead of 3, like the Batman Begins timeline between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, is Christopher Nolan didn't want to come back. He actually was quite content with what he did with the first two films, and he came out and he said many times in interviews that after Heath's unfortunate passing, he didn't feel like it was right to keep going, and he didn't really have any motivation. He didn't know what to do from there. And I think part of it also is, and he's revealed before, him and David S. Goyer, the writer, both revealed that they did have some early drafts that had the Joker in a part 3, where he's captured just like in the end of The Dark Knight. But in the beginning of part 3, he actually is on trial for his crimes, and he pours acid on Harvey Dent's face, causing him to turn to Two-Face. Now, as we know now, this all happened, obviously, they condensed it down, and while it wasn't directly, it was more of an indirect approach, the way the Joker created Two-Face. It still happened all in The Dark Knight. So what would have happened? What would Joker be? Would he be a main villain? Would he be a side villain? I think the rumors were that Warner Brothers really wanted Leonardo DiCaprio to play the Riddler. They wanted a kind of Joker-esque type of villain, maybe not the exact same thing, but something similar, and capitalize on the success of that villain from The Dark Knight. Now, the plan was, from what it sounds like, if you look at earlier drafts, another option that they kind of threw about during the production of Batman Begins even and The Dark Knight is to have the Joker be a secondary villain in this film, and maybe pulling the strings from behind, very similar to Ra's al Ghul, where he's revealed at the end to be the main villain, and it's not Scarecrow. So kind of something similar like that, or really what they did in Dark Knight Rises, where Talia al Ghul is actually the main antagonist, where Bane really was the one, he was kind of the puppet, and Talia was really the puppet master. So I think the idea originally was to have the Joker be something like that, where he was going to be behind the scenes pulling the strings somehow, and trying to piece that story together was going to be the challenge from there on out. So one of the other things to consider is what would happen if Heath Ledger did not pass away and he wanted to, which he did say he really was looking forward to hopefully coming back for a part 3. His sister has actually come out and said before that he was very pleased with his work after filming wrapped up, and he was really excited to come back to that character if need be for another time. And now I guess we can speculate maybe what would we want? What is something that I personally would want? Well, the way I see it is, if the film all played out the same, and this is just me talking here, if you could cut some scenes in the middle, I would personally take out the entire, if you could, take out the entire plot line with John Blake. And my problem with John Blake is I feel like his scenes are kind of unnecessary to the whole plot, honestly, other than he finds Commissioner in the sewers and they piece together from there of what Bane is doing. But let's pretend a lot of those scenes are trimmed down or cut out entirely, and instead when Bane finally does, about halfway through the film, reveal his plan and takes over Gotham and keeps him hostage with a nuclear bomb threat, he unleashes everybody from Blackgate Prison. Now the fun thing there would be is if he went to Arkham Asylum and went up to Joker's cell and maybe made a deal with him and released him. And the interesting thing here is actually this was talked about and written about in the Dark Knight Rises novel. It was actually very briefly touched upon in there, where it explains that the Joker, after his crimes and he was caught by Batman, he was sentenced and he was sent to Arkham, and he was actually the only inmate left there, because after the Dent Act, all these mobsters and other gang members who pleaded insanity under Dr. Crane ended up getting transferred to Blackgate because they weren't really insane. So all the people are left out of Blackgate and released, and then that leaves the Joker. And something like maybe him and Bane team up, and I don't really see that happening because Bane, I think, is very structured chaos, where the Joker is just mindless chaos. So it'd be interesting if Bane let him out only if he felt like he needed him, because he was scared when he realized that Batman came back. He climbed out of the pit, he came back, and in a desperate attempt to maybe thwart Batman's attempts to come back, or maybe in a desperate kind of desperation move, he releases this crazy man in hopes that it can kind of stop Batman. And something happens where it ends up turning on him, something like that. I don't know. I think it's really interesting, and it's probably one of my biggest what ifs in all of Batman lore, is what if Heath Ledger was in The Dark Knight Rises and he didn't unfortunately pass so early on. So there you have it, guys. That's kind of my take on the whole thing. It does sound like there was some ideas in the beginning when they were making the first two films, like kind of tinkering with it, like, oh yeah, I think Christopher Nolan loved a lot of the dailies and a lot of the reels where he saw Heath Ledger's performance and thought, this is so good. I think that's why he took so long to make the third film, is because I think his motivation was sapped after it, and I think he really just didn't know where to go from there, because how do you top one of the greatest performances ever? So we'll unfortunately never know, but it's always kind of fun to speculate and talk about. Let me know in the comments, guys, if there's anything you want me to cover. And until then, have a great day and stay safe.